Welcome back. And I already saw comments about the killer. And I do actually have stickers for it. There's the focus. So if you're at Kubecon EU, find me. We're having them at the AWS booth as well. Because yeah, it was laying next to where I was doing my demo, and it became the killer. So anyway, welcome, Michael. Welcome back to the show. It's been a while since you've been on the show, and we've missed you.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
Michael
right.
used to be a regular, and now you're doing amazing stuff with observability and Grafana and Prometheus, and I'm excited to have you show off some of the work you've been doing.
Yeah, thank you so much. I do miss the good old times and also the on-site. I think the last time was 2019 in San Diego. It's a nice after party, but you know, these days everything is online, so let's do it online. I just have 2 or 3 slides just to set the scene a little bit. Can you see my slide deck okay in presenter mode?
Yep, there's your slide deck. I gotcha.
Cool.
I know.
So
I took a little extra time with that video too, so we're gonna let you go. There we go.
Cool. The context really is observability, and I'm gonna make the point that Grafana is actually the tool that provides you with a uniform interface, and we're gonna explore what that uniform interface really is. So first off, the obvious question is, what is observability? And probably if you've been around yesterday, you heard Bobby already talking a little bit about certain things. And I just want to clarify a few and define a few things that are useful in our conversation. So observability really is the capability to continuously generate and discover actionable insights. And that's the main point, right? We want to do something to our systems. And how do we do that? Well, we have signals from those systems. And if you think about it, it's a feedback loop here, right? So if you think about the sources, that might be an EKS cluster, your pods are running there, etc. And they're all creating different signal types. We're going to talk about signals in a second. Then you have some kind of agent. The industry at large is standardizing on open telemetry, and that is also what I'm looking after from a product perspective, our AWS distribution of open telemetry. And last but not least, and that is where Grafana comes into play, there are destinations. On the one hand, for humans, right? If you want to sit in front of a dashboard and see what is going on there, correlate signals, etc. Or you have software. Think of a HPA, a horizontal pod autoscaler, that takes these signals, like metrics, for example, and then decides, okay, I'm gonna increase the number of pods, for example. So both humans and software can take these signals and that's the feedback loop, they do something to where these signals come from. And as I said, that might be a workload running in EKS, that might be a database or DynamoDB or whatever. Could be really anything that makes up your application. Okay. So what are the signals? You probably are all familiar with logs. So those are the textual payloads. Usually we humans consume them. Then there are metrics that are numerical signals. They're great for aggregating. They're great for finding some trends and alerting on them, because you have a numerical value there that you can say, if it's above this value or between this and this value, then do X, for example. Page me. Who doesn't love to be paged at 2 a.m. in the morning? Traces, distributed tracing, is all about propagating the execution context along a request path. That's a handful, really a lot, but what it really means is, if you think about a microservice and you have many microservices that together work to service a certain request, then you want to see how these things play together, where time is spent, etc. So this is the execution context, and the request path is the chain of all these, or the tree of all these microservices working together. The most recent addition in this mix are profiles, and those are all about the resource usage in the context of code execution, and open source projects like Parka and Pyroscope and CNCF Pixie make it more and more accessible to do that kind of continuously, really, also in production, and add to the mix. All right, and now we really get to Grafana. Grafana, I said initially already, is the uniform interface. What does that mean? Well, and we get to the demo in just a second, just to give you a little bit of context what you will be seeing in the browser in a second. Here we have on the right-hand side, you see 3 signal sources. CloudWatch, that provides us with logs. Prometheus, to be more specific, our AWS managed service for Prometheus. That's part of our service team that we are providing, and X-ray, right? So logs, metrics, and X-ray traces. And each of those rows that you see here reflects a rendering or combination of renderings of the respective signal types. And the uniform interface here means that as a user, right, you might be a developer debugging something, you might be on-call troubleshooting, whatever your role is, you don't need to worry about what is the particular query language to talk to, for example, Prometheus. Hint, it's prometheus, or CloudWatch, or OpenSearch, or X-ray, or whatever. Your interface is those panels that you can select a certain time frame, and then you can filter, and then you can correlate. So your interface is a visual one, and in the back end, of course, someone who puts together those dashboards and panels needs to understand and needs to speak the respective query languages of the data sources. But you as a user, you do not have to. You can just use them in a browsing, clicky, and filtering way. So this is the uniform interface. No matter what the data source, no matter what signal types, no matter what query language, to you, it's always the same way to interact with any kinds of signals. Of course, depending on the visualization type. That might be a graph, that might be a table, that might be a map, as seen with traces. Ready for the demo? Let's go.
Let's go.
Switching over to Firefox, and you let me know when you see my dashboard here. Can you, don't worry about the resolution. I'll get to everything, just to make sure you see my Firefox.
I still see slides.
Michael, so basically,
okay.
It's not just the metrics, right? Like typically when we think of Grafana, we think of metrics, but here it's all integrated.
I would challenge that if you think about Grafana. Well, I think what you probably are hinting at is that traditionally, if you look at Kubernetes and Prometheus growing up together more or less in the context of CNCF, this combo of Prometheus scraping the metrics and then providing an endpoint to query them, and Grafana to visualize those, this combo has been used for quite a while, and that is it's not a coincidence that we in our service team provide a managed Grafana and a managed Prometheus service. But yeah, Grafana is really for any kind of data source. So you really start off with the data sources, and you're looking at just to confirm, you see my Firefox.
No, it's still waiting to render. We might have to unshare, reshare. Let me try this.
Okay. Should I do that or?
Yeah, I don't know if I tried to pop it off the screen. So yeah, go ahead and unshare your screen, and we'll go back to it. Your full screen was still taking control.
Okay. Share my screen again. Let's do. Screen 3. The beauty of. Okay. Can you see my?
Let's see.
My Firefox now.
Oh, I see part of it. I see part of us. That's funny. There's like an overlay.
Okay. How about now?
Let me see. I'm going to pull it down here in the smaller area. Let's answer the question too while we try and get it. Tend to get confused on benefits and differences of Prometheus, Grafana, Elk Stack, agent-based tooling like Datadog. Any guidance there, Michael, on differences or just high level, like what people are looking at?
If you think of the second slide that I showed, those are really on different levels, right? Some of those are backend destinations. So if you think about Elasticsearch, OpenSearch, that's where you store certain signal types, right? Or Prometheus or AMP. There are certain observability solutions that are more end-to-end integrated, like Datadog. Are you talking about the agent? Are you talking about the SaaS offering, etc.? I would suggest, and I talk also about that and cover that in my newest book, a return on investment driven observability. So you work backwards from what can you get out of a certain signal, a certain tool set, etc., and then decide essentially, do you want to, for example, run that yourself? You might want to run Cortex or Thanos yourself, or do you want to outsource that to us or to some other provider there? But these are really different pieces in different parts of that pipeline.
I see your screen now. The text is like micro. I can't read
don't worry.
Okay.
I'll zoom in. Yeah. The most important thing is you now see the Firefox instance with the managed Grafana dashboard open. So we'll start with the data sources. I mentioned what Grafana really does, and managed Grafana is essentially the same. You provide a number of data sources, and that is what we, for AWS services, made super easy, right? So I'm zooming in here. Let me know if that is big enough. If you want to connect CloudWatch, for example, or X-Ray, or the managed open search service, or managed Prometheus, it's just a click away, right? You just click here, select the region, and everything is auto-discovered, right? And just to give you an idea, what I have configured in my in this demo, there are quite some data sources. And again, this is read-only, right? So there is no updates going on. Grafana just connects to the respective data source. That might be an AWS managed service. That might be that you're running yourself. Think about Loki, for example, right? If you, for example, say, hey, I'm running Loki in an EKS cluster, for example, myself, then, well, you can connect to Loki like that, right? You just say like, okay, here's my endpoint, etc. Right? So there are many, many data sources, and it's roughly really just a matter of figuring out, is that a data source that you want to run yourself, or is there an AWS service that you can use, such as, for example, OpenSearch or Prometheus, right? And what you then do is you define dashboards, right? And these dashboards have essentially, well, they have two things. On the one hand, you bring all these different data sources together. In this case, the dashboard that I've put together here, that doesn't really make sense. This is really for demonstration purposes to show you these three signal types: logs, metrics, and traces in action, right? Let's go through it step by step. But what it really means is, if you're designing these dashboards, you would probably take a more role task specific angle, right? You would say, okay, I'm going to put together a dashboard for a developer, for an EKS developer, or for someone who is an infrastructure platform owner, whatever. And then depending on the role or task at hand, you would say, okay, I need VPC flow logs from here, and I need some data that I have in CloudWatch logs, etc., etc. So this is purely for demonstration purposes to give you an idea of these three signal types: logs, metrics, and traces in action. As I said, the workload. Yeah.
For this demo, Michael, you have basically selected a log source, metric source, and the
yes. So what I have is I have a signal source called Howley. This is open source. I can share the link afterwards. That generates logs. It generates metrics in the Prometheus exposition format, and it generates traces. Okay. in using OpenTelemetry, which means you can run that, and you will see that in the traces in the service map, how they are together, how they're wired together. It kind of simulates a mini microservice with three microservices, and that's really it. So logs, as I said, first example source here coming from CloudWatch, and this is really good old logs as we know it. There is not much there other than you can search for something. So you probably want to consume that in CloudWatch. You could also have your logs from Elasticsearch or OpenSearch here. This rendering, which is really raw, is not very useful. It really just demonstrates that you can actually consume logs.
Yeah, I don't know if you can make that any bigger too. I don't know if it's the screen not rendering properly, or the font being small.
We can do it, but there's really not that much interest in it. It's really literally the raw CloudWatch logs input. What you usually would do is you would select time frames, like, okay, I want to look at these logs, and probably then really fine-grained operations to that in the CloudWatch console directly, right? Because you have literally the raw log message there. There's not much there, at least in this. There are other like Loki where you can do more, but in this visualization with CloudWatch, there's not much there. Metrics, as I said, they come from from Managed Prometheus. And let's have a look at the last 5 minutes. I've created a little bit of load there. And as you can see, different visualizations here. So here we have an aggregate about the invocations ordered by status code. So, the majority of them is green, meaning 200. And then there are some simulated. I configured it the way that roughly 10% of the responses are some kind of 400, 500, whatever. And if we look at the query behind that, and remember, the uniform interface means I, as a user, don't need to worry about it. Someone had to, whoever put that dashboard together, had to learn PromQL and had to put that together, right? This Howley _total, that's the counter here, taking the rate, summarizing it, and grouping it by the HTTP status code, right? And then you can do other things, like you can, for example, do a P50, P90 of that, right? You can do a lot of different aggregation. That's just the power of PromQL, and then the way how you visualize it here. And you can do many things here in terms of how you render things, how you put certain annotations in there, legend, etc., etc. So it's very flexible, very powerful. You can customize it to your needs.
Michael, I have a quick question for you. And
yeah.
This may merit its own talk, but nowadays it's not uncommon for customers to have multiple clusters.
Yeah.
And so is there a way within Grafana to create dashboards for a particular cluster and prevent certain teams from being able to view those dashboards?
Yes. So there are two parts to it, right? One of the access control scheme, if you want to, is on the data source level, right? Remember, the data sources, that's where you say, give me CloudWatch in this region, or give me whatever you have in this region, if it's an AWS service. There is also, in the context of Grafana, there are essentially three roles: admin, editor, and viewer. And going forward, there will be fine-grained access control. I think that's the product name, fine-grained access control in Grafana upstream, that allows you to go even further. So you could, for example, say in this dashboard, if you're in this group, right, you in our case, in Managed Grafana, you have either AWS SSO or SAML version 2, and then you're in a certain group, right? You can say, like, if you're in that group, then you can, for example, change the variables up there, and you see these three, data sources in this region or whatever, right? Like very, very fine-grained. Currently, in the current version of Grafana that we have here, 8.5, I believe 8.2, that's not yet the case, but going forward, that will be the case, yes.
Great, thanks.
Okay, and last but not least, as I said, Howley also produces traces, and I might need to go out a little bit, just so that you can see the full picture there. From the left to the right, that's the service map, right? That's the overview of what is going on there. Front-end client, that's just curl running in my terminal, hitting the front end, downstream, etc. Then we get certain metrics also out of X-ray, and then we can look at certain traces. If we look at a certain span here, of course, you can also look at that in X-ray if you want. You would see the actual call graph or request path here. So in this case, this is downstream, and you would see the span here. And maybe that's not the best span, but you probably get the idea. You can essentially look at the actual spans, starting at the dashboard and then drilling into that from whatever interests you. And one last bit here in terms of correlation. The basic correlation obviously is the time-based one, right? If you essentially say, like, okay, I'm interested in what is going on in the last, let's say 6 hours, for example. Let's say you get paged and you see, like, oh, there is a spike, right? There is something going on here, right? So you do what I do here, you select a certain time range, and then all the different panels within the same dashboard are synchronized and get zoomed in. And now you can see, like, okay, you can view that from a metrics perspective. You can zoom into the spans. You can look at how the context really propagates, how the call graph looks like, etc.
I think this is great for root cause analysis if I'm trying to find what happened.
That's absolutely one use case. Yes.
Yeah, definitely.
I know we only have a couple of minutes left. I have one more slide, kind of like new stuff coming up. So I'd like to use that opportunity. Let me know if when I switch over now to PowerPoint and I don't go full screen, can you actually see my PowerPoint, or are you still seeing Firefox?
We can see your PowerPoint. Yeah.
PowerPoint, great. So just to very quickly point out, we do have a public roadmap, so go and look at the public roadmap. I'm going to share the link in a moment. We very recently launched EKS add-on. I think Bobby mentioned it yesterday already. We worked on that on the one hand in my team, in the ADOT team, worked with the EKS team to make that a first-class citizen. And it's a really big thing for us. And I hope getting feedback from you this week or next week at KubeCon. What do you think? What is missing? What should we do next, etc. And then, just between the 4 or 5 of us, obviously, there are a few things I want to hint at. We learned yesterday about the blueprints, and we are in the process of launching the so-called observability accelerator. That's a blueprints module, so you can, with a few Terraform applies, you can stand up the entire stack, whatever I showed you here, for specific workloads and data sources, GMX, for example, or Nginx. And as a heads up, next week at KubeCon, we will announce, we as in upstream open telemetry, that the metric signal type will go general availability. And you can imagine that we also have a launch planned around that. So that should give us some moments to discuss. And I'm gonna share the link.
I just put the link to the roadmap in chat.
Okay, cool.
So
and yeah, I think the EKS add-on we already linked yesterday. That's the blog post to the EKS add-on. I don't know if we want to.
Is the roadmap and the roadmap's the right place if someone wants a feature or is looking for something to be added and included in Managed Grafana in the future?
In Managed Grafana, right. So this is the public roadmap of Managed Grafana, not Grafana upstream. There's a separate one, obviously. But yeah, we're making sure that we have everything aligned and see that, if there is an ask upstream in Grafana, that we know how to work with that. So don't worry about if you have a suggestion or whatever, don't worry about is that upstream or not. We can figure that out. Just let us know what you'd like to see, and have a look at what we are currently already have listed there.
And I'm going to, where'd my comments tab go? Here's the there it is, blog post for the managed add-ons.
Correct.
Going in chat right now. So that's
correct.
That was announced recently, and if you want to manage add-on to give you that OTel collector, you can just do it now as part of cluster creation, which is awesome.
So if you have any complaints or suggestions around ADOT, just find me and yeah.
Thank you so much, Michael. This is a great overview. Anyone that hasn't played with this yet, if you might be running your own Grafana or Prometheus, check out the managed options. It's just one less thing that you don't have to worry about.
I have one more link, if I may. We have a collection of recipes that you can, essentially, rather than doing it from scratch, you can just use that. And I will share that link in. Yeah, there you go. I'll just share it here and hopefully. Okay.
Cool.
So there, if you look for MG, for example.
Yep. We love some recipes. There you go.
Cool.
Awesome. Thank you so much. We are going to have one more quick video break, and then I'm bringing in Eli and Pavan for CDKs. If you want to manage your Kubernetes resources without the YAML, stick around because we got some things to talk about. So we will be right back once I find the video that I want to play.
Thank you.